I never thought the day would come when my own daughter's fiancé, the man I welcomed into my home, would try to orchestrate my kidnapping. But he didn't count on one thing: a mother's instinct and a widow's newfound resolve to fight back with everything I had. And believe me, I had plenty. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. It had been 2 years, 3 months, and 12 days since Richard passed away from a sudden heart attack. 38 years we had built a life together, a beautiful home here in Portland, Oregon, and a nest egg that, by the time he left me, amounted to just over $8 million. I was, by any measure, a wealthy woman, but Richard's death left a gaping hole, a profound loneliness that I, Clara Brennan, a retired high school history teacher who always prided myself on my resilience, struggled to fill. I felt like a half-person, adrift in the quiet expanse of our expensive home, and perhaps that made me vulnerable. My daughter, Emma, bless her heart, tried her best to pull me out of my shell. She was a bright, independent woman, working hard at a marketing firm, and she worried about me. That's how David Mitchell entered our lives. He was Emma's fiancé, a charming, articulate man who said he worked in financial planning. He was 37, though I later learned he was 42, and he had a way about him. He was attentive, always asking thoughtful questions about Richard, about my teaching career, about my hobbies. He'd bring me flowers on Mother's Day, even clear the dinner table when Emma and I cooked. He seemed in every way perfect for my daughter, and I welcomed him. Truly, I did. He eased the quiet in the house, brought laughter back into Emma's eyes. One Tuesday morning, David called, his voice laced with concern. "Clara, I know you're planning that business trip next week, and I was thinking, your car, it's getting a little older. Just for peace of mind, especially with you driving alone, I'd really feel better if I took it in for a full inspection, oil change, the works. My mechanic is top-notch, and he could have it back to you by tomorrow afternoon. Just for safety, He laid it on thick, but it felt genuine. I was planning to visit an old college friend in Seattle, a perfectly innocent trip, and I appreciated his thoughtfulness. "That's so kind of you, David," I told him. "You really don't have to." But he insisted, and I, still basking in the warmth of his seemingly selfless gesture, agreed. The next day, when I walked into the parking garage to retrieve my car from David, a small, unremarkable detail caught my eye. As I reached into my purse, a heavy leather tote, it slipped from my grasp, tumbling onto the concrete floor. Contents scattered: my wallet, my glasses case, a tube of lipstick, and a small magnetic device I had never seen before. It was a Silent Tracker Pro, about the size of a deck of cards, sleek and black, with a powerful magnet on one side. My heart gave a sickening lurch. It was stuck inconspicuously under the rear bumper, just above the exhaust pipe, almost perfectly hidden. My blood ran cold. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't a random occurrence. David was the only person who had had my car for the last 24 hours, the only one who would have had the opportunity or the motive to place such a thing there. The charming, thoughtful David, my daughter's fiancé. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The quiet ache of grief was suddenly replaced by a sharp, burning indignation. This wasn't about maintenance or safety. This was about surveillance. This was about me. The shock was immense, but it quickly gave way to a chilling clarity. I scooped up my belongings, the tracker hidden in my palm, and walked to my car, my mind racing. No, I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. Confrontation now would only tip my hand. He would deny it, of course, charm his way out, or worse, accelerate whatever nefarious plan this was a part of. The tears of a grieving widow, those were gone. My mind, which had spent decades analyzing historical strategies and human motivations, was now sharp, focused. The victim within me evaporated, replaced by a cold, calculated resolve. Richard would have been proud. He always admired my tenacity. He always told me I had a spine of steel when it mattered. It was time to show it. The next few hours were a whirlwind of purposeful action. I made an excuse to David that my trip was postponed then headed straight to a well-known electronics store not far from my home. I purchased a heavy-duty magnetic case, industrial-strength adhesive, and a prepaid burner phone. I drove to the nearest highway overpass, my eyes scanning the passing vehicles. There, rumbling by, was a semi-truck, its trailer glinting in the afternoon sun, emblazoned with Canadian license plates and a destination clearly marked Vancouver. Perfect. With practiced precision, I pulled the tracker from its original magnetic base, affixed it to the heavy-duty case, applied the adhesive, and, in a swift, decisive move, attached it firmly to the underside of the semi-trailer as it idled at a red light. My heart pounded, but a strange sense of exhilaration coursed through me. Let him track that. The true genius of my plan, I would soon discover, was its unexpected detour. A few days later, my burner phone rang. The display showed an unfamiliar Canadian number. I hesitated, then answered. "Miss Clara Brennan?" A calm, authoritative voice asked. "This is Sergeant Mitchell Wright, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, out of Calgary, Alberta." My breath caught. He explained that one of their patrols, acting on an anonymous tip about suspicious activity at a truck stop outside Calgary, had intercepted a man named Vincent Torres. Torres, they had discovered, was found with a magnetic tracking device, a Silent Tracker Pro, he specified, in his possession, along with a detailed folder containing my photograph and extensive surveillance notes about my daily routine, my home, even the layout of my property. They had also found an encrypted messaging app on his phone, detailing a virtual kidnapping plot, a scheme to abduct me, demand a $200,000 ransom from Emma, and split a $20,000 payment, $5,000 of which Torres had already received. The person he was communicating with, the mastermind, went by the alias DM. Sergeant Wright suggested, very strongly, that I contact my local police immediately. David Mitchell, DM. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with a horrifying finality. He wasn't just tracking me, he was planning to kidnap me. My local contact at the Portland Police Department was Detective Sarah Chen, a no-nonsense woman with a keen mind. I laid out the entire story, from David's initial charm to the tracker to the RCMP call. Detective Chen listened, her expression unreadable, then nodded slowly. "Miss Brennan, you've done incredibly well. Your actions likely saved your life." That was the moment I truly understood the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about feeling betrayed. It was about survival. With Detective Chen's guidance, I assembled my own covert army. First, I called Harold Finch, my longtime accountant, a man whose meticulousness was legendary. I explained, in vague terms, that I had suspicions about David's financial dealings and asked him to scrutinize my accounts for any irregularities since David had entered my life. Harold, without fanfare, went to work. A week later, his report landed on my desk. $37,000, siphoned from my accounts over the last 18 months, in small, disguised electronic transfers. Transfers to shell companies, to crypto wallets, to accounts that vanished as quickly as they appeared. It was systematic. It was theft. Next, I engaged Susan Martinez, a sharp-witted attorney known for her tenacity in white-collar cases. Her investigation unearthed David's true professional history. He hadn't just been in financial planning. He'd been fired from 2 previous positions for inappropriate client interactions, a euphemism, Susan explained, for manipulating elderly clients into questionable investments. More damningly, Susan's contacts revealed David's Achilles heel, a crushing $300,000 gambling debt to a rather unsavory organization run by a man named Tony Marchetti. David wasn't just a charming fiancé. He was a desperate man, drowning in debt, willing to resort to extreme measures. To fill in the gaps, I hired Marcus Webb, a former FBI agent now operating as a private investigator. Marcus was a quiet, observant man who moved with an almost invisible efficiency. He put David under surveillance. Within days, Marcus uncovered David's criminal connections. Not just the loan sharks, but a network of low-level grifters. He found a storage unit David frequented, an anonymous mailbox rental, And perhaps most crucially, he discovered David had booked a one-way flight to Miami, departing in just 4 days. Emma knew nothing of this. He was planning to flee, the net was tightening, and time was running out. Finally, I brought in Jennifer Walsh, a financial forensic specialist, a genius at tracing patterns of deceit. Jennifer's findings were the most chilling. David Mitchell wasn't his real name. He was Derek Morrison, originally from Buffalo, New York. And this wasn't his first rodeo. Derek Morrison had systematically targeted wealthy elderly women for over a decade, using at least 4 different identities, leaving a trail of financial devastation in his wake. She showed me files on Margaret Wellington, Helen Rodriguez, and Janet Pierce, all women who had been charmed, defrauded, and left significantly poorer. My case wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a horrifying pattern. My initial $8 million had quietly grown to $8.5 million over the years, making me an even more enticing target for someone like Derek. As my team worked tirelessly assembling an irrefutable mountain of evidence, David, unaware of the trap I was meticulously setting, grew bolder, more anxious. He started asking Emma about my assets, about Richard's will, things that made my skin crawl. He was subtly pressuring me about consolidating my investments, suggesting more aggressive strategies to secure Emma's future. He was escalating, growing suspicious, sensing his window closing. Marcus Webb's surveillance reports confirmed his increasing desperation and erratic behavior. He was making calls to his associates more frequently, his voice hushed, agitated. The Miami flight confirmed it. He was planning to disappear, likely with whatever he could still get his hands on, leaving Emma heartbroken and me potentially kidnapped or worse. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. The evidence was overwhelming, and David's desperation made him dangerous. I called Detective Chen. "It's time," I told her. "He's leaving in 4 days. I want to set a trap. A final supper." The night of the confrontation, I prepared David's favorite meal, a perfectly roasted chicken, his preferred Cabernet Sauvignon, and for dessert, a rich chocolate cake, just as I had made for countless celebrations. Emma was away on a last-minute work trip that I had subtly encouraged. The house was quiet, the dining room bathed in the soft glow of candlelight. Everything seemed normal, serene. David arrived, impeccably dressed, a charming smile on his face. "Clara, this smells incredible. You shouldn't have gone to so much trouble." I merely smiled, a placid, almost unreadable expression. "Nonsense, David, it's a pleasure. Please, sit." We made small talk through the first course, about Emma, about his busy week at work. His eyes, however, darted nervously around the room, a subtle tension in his jaw. He knew something was coming. When the main course was finished, and before I brought out the cake, I rose from my seat, walked to the sideboard, and retrieved a stack of neatly organized folders. I laid them on the table before him. "David," I began, my voice calm, clear, "we need to talk. About your future. And mine." His smile faltered. "Clara, what is this? Is everything all right?" "No, David," I said, looking him directly in the eye. "Nothing is all right. Not since I found this." I pulled out a photograph of the Silent Tracker Pro. "Under my car. Just after you so thoughtfully took it in for maintenance." His face went white. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "And then," I continued, my voice unwavering, "my call from Sergeant Mitchell Wright of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police about a man named Vincent Torres, arrested with my photograph and detailed surveillance notes. A man who confessed to a virtual kidnapping plot orchestrated by someone named DM, a plot to abduct me and demand $200,000 from my daughter, Emma." His eyes darted towards the front door. I could see the panic beginning to set in. "But that's not all, Derek." I used his real name and watched him flinch. "Harold Finch, my accountant, discovered you've systematically stolen $37,000 from my accounts over the past 18 months. And Susan Martinez, my attorney, found out about your prior terminations for client manipulation and your $300,000 gambling debt to Tony Marchetti's organization." I pushed the final folder across the table. In Jennifer Walsh, my financial forensic specialist uncovered your real identity, Derek Morrison, from Buffalo, New York. She detailed your pattern of targeting wealthy elderly women. Margaret Wellington, Helen Rodriguez, Janet Pierce. All victims of yours. And, of course, Marcus Webb's surveillance confirmed your flight to Miami, booked for 4 days from now. His composure shattered. He pushed back from the table, knocking over his wine glass. The deep crimson liquid spread across the pristine white tablecloth like a wound. "This is insane! You're delusional, Clara. I don't know what you're talking about." He lunged for the front door, but it was too late. As his hand touched the doorknob, the front door swung open from the outside. Detective Chin stood there, her face impassive, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. "David Mitchell, also known as Derek Morrison, you're under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and grand larceny." Derek froze, his eyes wide, with a mixture of terror and disbelief. He had been so sure of himself, so sure he had me fooled. The officers moved swiftly, calmly, placing him in handcuffs. He tried to resist, to shout, but it was futile. His charming facade was completely gone, revealing the desperate, cornered rat beneath. As they let him out, he looked at me, his eyes blazing with a hatred I had never seen. "You'll regret this, old woman. I'll get out, and you'll pay." The trial was grueling, a sordid spectacle where Derek Morrison, the supposed loving fiancé, audaciously attempted to spin a web of lies, trying to implicate me as his criminal accomplice. He claimed I was the true mastermind, the one who orchestrated the kidnapping plot and the financial schemes, painting me as a ruthless puppet master using him as a pawn. He described the supposed intricate details of our alleged conspiracy, trying to convince the jury that a grieving elderly widow was actually a criminal genius. It was an insult to my intelligence, and frankly a desperate, pathetic ploy. But the assistant district attorney, Patricia Hernandez, was brilliant. She didn't try to shut him down. Instead, she let him talk, letting him weave his elaborate tale, detailing how he had set up the shell companies, how he had manipulated the accounts, how he had hired Vincent Torres, all under my supposed direction. Every detail he provided, every confession of his own actions, was then skillfully used against him. Patricia used his own testimony, his own meticulously described crimes, to prove his guilt, not mine. The more he tried to implicate me, the deeper he dug his own grave. It was a masterclass in legal strategy. The jury deliberated for a mere 97 minutes. Derek Morrison was convicted on all counts: wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and numerous other federal charges. The judge, clearly unmoved by Derek's theatrics, handed down a sentence of 28 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. And to add insult to injury for a man obsessed with money, full restitution was ordered. In the aftermath, my life, and Emma's, was forever changed. Emma, initially devastated, collapsed into my arms when she learned the full extent of Derek's betrayal. The man she loved, the man she planned to marry, was a career criminal. It was a brutal awakening for her, but one that ultimately made her stronger. She went through a period of intense grief and anger, but she emerged from it with a newfound strength and independence I hadn't seen in her before. As for me, I had reclaimed my life, not just from Derek, but from the shadow of grief that had consumed me after Richard's death. The experience had forged a new purpose within me. I took the restitution funds, along with a significant portion of my own wealth, and established the Clara Brennan Foundation for Elder Fraud Prevention. Its mission was simple: to educate, to empower, and to protect other vulnerable seniors from predators like Derek Morrison. And who better to run it than Emma? She took to it with a passion and drive that made my heart swell with pride. She used her marketing skills to build a robust organization, reaching out to communities, giving talks, and offering resources. She wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was an advocate, a leader in her own right. I still live in my quiet, expensive home in Portland, but the silence is different now. It's no longer the heavy silence of loneliness, but a peaceful quiet filled with the hum of purpose. I travel, I spend time with friends, and I work with the foundation, advising, sharing my story, ensuring that Derek Morrison's expensive lesson serves as a powerful deterrent for others. I am no longer just a grieving widow. I am an empowered advocate, an unexpected warrior who faced betrayal head-on and found justice. And my wealth? It's now measured not just in dollars, but in the lives we help protect. A lasting legacy built from the ashes of deceit. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.